of our whole wheat bread.
A fairly apt song for what we're about to get into. You know what I mean? But also, hello. Hi, everyone. For VOD watchers, it was raining blood. I really... Every time election season comes around, every time election season comes around, I want to talk about exactly how shit Australian politics is. Not that any politics around the world is good at all. In fact, most politics around the world are actually kind of fucking trash. Like, trash tier. Politics in general is trash tier in most parts of the world. But Australian politics is specifically, like, worse than others. Because you've got a party of, like, liars being propped up by the media circus that owns the entirety of the media. The LNP don't do anything for anyone. They're liars. The media lies for them. And Labor are awful at playing the media game, so Labor frequently lose elections. But this, I've heard that this is a good debate. Don't hold back, tell us how you really feel. I'm pretty sure if you know me, you know how I really feel. So, full disclosure, I'm a Greens Labor swing voter, so there's going to be a little bit of bias, but, you know. Being a Labor and Greens swing voter isn't like a political standpoint, it's just being called like having a fucking brain. I feel like that's how it should be delivered as. Yeah, I think we've got everything good. This is a great debate. If people want to know why I feel like the media is completely biased, this was a debate set up by the Courier Mail in Brisbane. That's a Murdoch media. It's being broadcast nationally by Sky News, which is Murdoch media. I haven't watched this. The only thing that I've heard about this is that from all Sky News pundits and a lot of comment sections is that Albanese did fairly well. That's all I've heard. What I assume that means is that Albanese did really well and possibly made Scott Morrison look bad. Not that it takes a lot to make Scott Morrison look bad, let's be honest. So that's all I know. But yeah, man. That's how I really feel. Let's actually get into it though. For real, for real. That looks good. I think this is pretty good. I don't think we need a text box. Do you think we need a text box? One of the top stories on Sky News Australia's Albanese wins first leaders debate. Yeah, dude, he did well. I assume he did really well because it's all I've heard. Maybe we add a text box. Can I get a test? Can you just chat something real quick? Actually, I'll do it. Kappa. Cool. There we go. That should be... That's no nonsense. It's not, like, too ridiculous. We'll grab any sort of thoughts. It's not like you need to really see anything. Well, it looks like we've... Oh, wait. We're missing one thing. Sirens in the back. Dude, I can't. I can't do anything. There's just police around, I guess. We are missing one thing, though. One thing. Just real quick before we get started. What would the person be in the crowd be called, you think? Would it be, it wouldn't be the speaker, it would be a moderator? Yeah, moderator interrupts. Not gonna split it between Albo and ScoMo? Why? It'll literally just be all Albanese. Does this person even interrupt Scott Morrison at all? Whoops. Look, let it never be said that I am not partisan about these issues. I want to come into this with an open mind because I feel like Labor's been pretty shit as well. So I won't be too home field advantage. But I will say this. From what I've heard, the moderator interrupted Albanese and Albanese only. So fuck it. Let's just get into it.
Is a choice.
Scott Morrison has nothing to say about the future.
People want to know what you think now, mate.
Scott Morrison and Anthony Albanese go head-to-head for the first time.
This is a great moment in democracy.
Oh my fucking god, it's John Howard.
There is so much at stake.
Hey ho, let's go.
This is the Sky News Courier Mail People's Forum with Chief News Anchor Kieran Gilbert.
Good evening and welcome to the Sky News Courier Mail People's Forum, coming to you live.
There's something really, I don't want to pause it too much, but there's something really oxymoronic about the Sky News Courier Mail People's Forum. Yeah, all right, the People's Forum for these fucking
Live from the
clowns.
Gabba, 100 undecided voters here to put their questions to our leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the opposition leader and the Prime Minister. Thank you. Hey, Anthony.
Here we go, the handshake. All right, let's have a look. It's 100 Labor voters who we call undecided. Oh yeah, Courier Mail, Sky News, definitely going to be favouring Labor. I think you're on the copium, bud. Who won the handshake? I don't think anyone did. I'm going to call it a tie.
We had the coin toss before coming onto air. The Prime Minister won the toss. He's going to kick off with the opening statements. 1 minute each.
Actually, do a coin toss.
Thank you very much, Kieran, and thank you all for joining us here this evening. After everything we've been through as a country over these last few years, I am incredibly optimistic about Australia's future. Australians are incredibly resilient. They've overcome, we've pushed through. And now we're in a very strong position despite the many challenges we continue to face. Our economy today is one of the strongest in the advanced world. 2 years ago, we were told unemployment would go to 15%, but yet today it's at 4%, the equal lowest level in almost 50 years. Our budget has turned around because of our economic plan to the tune of more than $100 billion, enabling us to give real cost of living relief to families and people right across the country. So this election is a choice. It's a choice about how we keep our economy strong, because when you have a strong economy, you can deliver on your plans. You can do the things that you say you want to do. You can continue record investments in health and education. You can defend our country and invest in the safety of women and children and, of course, Australians right across the country. So it is a choice between a stronger economy and a weaker economy, a stronger future and an uncertain one. I look forward to answering your questions.
PM, thank you. Mr Albanese.
Well, thanks very much, Kieran, and thanks, Scott, for agreeing to this debate, and thanks, everyone, for coming along here and those watching at home.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Scott and I agree that Australia is the greatest country on earth, but I believe we can have a better future if we have a better government. You all know that the cost of everything is going up, but your wages aren't. That's why we need to lift wages. We need a plan for cheaper childcare, cheaper electricity. We need a plan for housing affordability. We need to make sure we have a strong economy with secure work. And we need to make more things here using cheap, clean energy to drive manufacturing again. Now, the government's been in office for almost a decade. The truth is that they haven't learnt from their mistakes. They keep repeating them. And they don't have a plan for the future. We must do better, and we can do better. And one way we can do better is by having a National Anti-Corruption Commission to restore faith in politics. It's needed. I look forward to hearing your questions tonight, and I thank all of you for joining us here and at home.
Let's kick off with the questions. We've got
fucking Albanese shooting fireworks straight from the hip. Yeah. I mean, Scott Morrison came out talking about the same fucking shit. Like, oh, yeah, you know, everything's fucking grouse, bud. We've been sick. And it's like, fine, you've been acceptable, I guess. But Albanese throwing straight fireworks. Just straight up hitting the points he needs to. That's very good. I think both of them came out with pretty good. Morrison was a bit middling, but that Morrison himself is middling. Like, there's nothing... Look, listen. Scott Morrison is incredibly milquetoast. There's nothing exciting about him. So, him coming out with a nothing exciting speech isn't exactly like... like, it's pretty par for the course for Scott Morrison, let's be real. I'm trying to get... there's one of the lights that I've got, because I've got like a 3 thing. One of the lights is hitting me directly on the head, and it's creating like a shine mark, and I fucking hate it. I have to change it. I can't... Look, I know I'm bald. I know, I get it. But we don't have to highlight it, okay? It doesn't have to be highlighted every single time I fucking live and breathe, okay? Just fucking listen. Alright? We can do better. We can do better. There's better jokes. There's better humor than lol bald. Right, cool.
In the front row here, Paul, if you could take us to your feet and fire away.
No worries, thank you. You've both spoken about affordability. My questions are basically twofold, and it's about housing affordability. I've got 2 daughters who are just about to get into that market. One's just about to leave grade 12, one's in university. So this is a real concern. So, as I said, 2-part question. So what is the government doing or going to do in the future to make it more effective? Because it's not effective at the moment. And one of the big parts around it is for foreign ownership. What is the government going to do about foreign ownership? We all know that foreign investment into the country, especially in the housing market, is actually driving the prices up, which is making it unaffordable. If we lived in Thailand, Indonesia, China, Fiji, as a non-citizen, we wouldn't be able to buy property there.
Okay, I think we've got the drift. We'll go with the PM first. Thanks, PM.
Thank you.
Did the moderator just interrupt the fucking guy asking a question?
Wouldn't be able to buy property there.
Okay, I think we've got the drift. We'll go with the PM first. Thanks.
Are we counting that? Do we count that? Dude, that was... Dude. This motherfucker... This guy just pulled the mic out of his face. Yeah, I think we got the drift, mate. Don't ask fucking questions, you little bitch. I want to count that. I want to count that. I'm going to count that. That's a shot. That is a shot. He straight up just interrupted someone asking a fucking question. It's going on the board. We're counting it.
Thank you. Well, look, thank you very much for the question. You're right. It's always hard to buy a house, and it's particularly hard now, and it's got harder. It's a tough economy when you're trying to get out there and buy a house. I remember when Jenny and I bought our first house, it was 30 years ago. It was tough then, but I believe it's tougher now. Here in Brisbane, you're looking at median house prices of about $840,000. Now, for apartments, it's around $450,000, the median. And one of the things that we've done at the last election, I wanted to see more Australians get in and buy their own home. And so we introduced a range of programs. The Home Guarantee Scheme, the Home Builder Program, which gave people grants to support to build their own home. And there was also the National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation that was loaning to community housing organisations so they could build more affordable dwelling units. We've got 300,000 Australians into their own home by ensuring they didn't have to have a 20% deposit, they had to save for a 5% deposit. And for single mums, Nicole, who I met in Western Australia just the other day, she's...
We're just random name dropping people. They fucking Billy out the back told me that he bought a house with his fucking shoestrings. Like, come on, dude.
Bought her first house because she only had to have a 2% deposit. Now that saved her years and years and years. House prices are going up, but one of the things we've been able to do is make it that bit easier by ensuring that the government was underwriting the balance of the deposit so they could get access to those loans and they could get into their first home, which meant they got onto the ladder. 160,000 Australians got into their own home for the first time just last year. That's about 70% up on where it had been previously from the past decade. So those programs are working and we're expanding them.
OK, thanks, PM. Opposition Leader.
Home loans are insidious by nature. Home loans are ridiculous. People are not arguing that, like, home loans are tough to get, because they're not. Like, banks give home loans out like it's fucking candy. Why? Because it gives them a shitload of money. People aren't frustrated about the access to home loans. They're frustrated about the access to fucking houses that are affordable without taking out a home loan that fucks your, like, family up for the next 20 years. My parents have lived in this house for, like, what, 30 odd years, and they're still on a fucking mortgage to pay it. Like, come on, man. Like, mortgages don't even feel good to do in fucking Monopoly. They don't feel great to do in real life. They're awful to do in real life. No one's arguing the point that home loans should be easier to get. They're arguing the point that houses should be easier to get. He's talked a lot about what he's gonna do. The FLHDS, which Tam pinged in chat, the first home loan deposit scheme is insanely insidious. It's fucking contributed massively to housing prices going up, because while the building one was okay, it was also really hard to get that building grant unless you were a major developer, which is awful. Was awful. It just drove it up. Because of what tends to happen is affordability goes up, home loans go up, but affordability goes up just that little bit more. And when you increase the base level of what people can get, people sell houses for more, which is why it's a bubble, because everyone's like, fuck it, they're getting more money, they can offset the money we jack to the price with what the government are giving us. So essentially what Scott Morrison said is nothing, and really hasn't done a whole lot at all. It's frustrating. It's frustrating listening to him talk about how he's done a whole bunch of things. Like, he's not talked about what he's going to do in the future, which is a thing that Scott Morrison does. He's talked about what they've done, but what they've done is what's happening. So the prices are going up despite what they're doing. In fact, the prices are going up because of what they're doing. And he doesn't ever dispel, like, what he's going to do in the future to make sure it doesn't happen. He just says, oh yeah, we've done a whole bunch of things, but the prices still go up anyway. Fuck it, dude, who cares?
Well, thanks very much for your question, and it's a common story you hear all around Australia.
I really hope that... Are they going to thank literally everyone for their question? I hate it, bro. Just fucking stop.
People are worried about whether their kids will ever get into that great Australian dream that I was raised with of owning your own home. It was something that we took for granted, perhaps. I grew up in public housing, where my mum lived in the same one house for all of her 65. People out there don't get. He drummed into me.
70% up on where it had been previously from the
public housing, where
I forgot that if you press numbers on the keyboard, it timestamps to the video.
And my mum lived in the same one house for all of her 65 years. But she drummed into me, when you get the opportunity, save for a deposit, buy your own home. But I know that it's just so tough now. So we need to do measures, including some of the measures that the government have done are terrific. But we are missing out on bits too. We're not doing anything in terms of social ownership, which would increase the supply. We have a plan for a Housing Australia Future Fund that would have 20,000 additional public housing units, as well as 10,000 affordable housing units for essential workers. One of the problems we've got is that some of emergency service workers in my electorate and in parts of Brisbane find it difficult to be able to afford to live close to work, and we need to address that as well. We also need to address the rental crisis, because too many people now, rents are going up through the roof as well, and they're doing it really tough. And Scott said that if you're having difficulty with rents, you can just go buy a house. The truth is
he said that
it's much more difficult than that, and we need to address each of the issues. How do we get people into home ownership? How do we increase social housing? How do we address affordable housing for essential workers?
Well, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, Anthony made a couple of points there, and he made a comment about what I was saying. We provide through Commonwealth Rental Assistance some $5.1 billion a year, and it supports 1.4 million people on their rents every single year. So you might be on income support, but you also get rental assistance on top of that. But one of the important things we did through the National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation, we've already had 15,000 affordable housing units and dwellings built with community housing organisations, borrowing money at very low rates as a government. I did this with all the premiers and the chief ministers so we could loan into those community housing organisations that are so well placed to help people get into affordable house.
Did you have
now we've increased that by $2 billion. No, I'm happy to come to that
as well.
But I'll just say $2 billion we've put more into that fund to ensure that in total we would have done just under 30,000. Now on foreign ownership, a very good point. On foreign ownership, not only have we toughened the laws on foreign ownership in this country for residential real estate, but more importantly, I increased the resources for the Australian Taxation Office to make sure they're being...
He didn't. His housing minister did.
...complied with. And so we've forced divestments of homes that have been bought not in accordance with our laws. It's one thing to have laws, but unless you actually invest in the enforcement of those laws, which we have done by increasing the resources to the Australian Taxation Office to chase down those who've gone and bought those houses when they shouldn't have been able to, well, your laws won't be effective.
PM, I think we're going to have to move on.
Sure.
Rent assistance is a joke. It's been a joke for years. It's such a joke that, like, poker nails it straight on the head. You get fucking nothing from rental assistance. It does absolutely nothing, and it's another one of those bottom line money gives that the government's given you, but then allowed people to just raise it. They give you $160, let's say. $160 on a single parent income, but then rental strata get to raise your rent by $200, so you're out $40. It's insidious. There's no protections for getting shit on, essentially, which is part of the issue. He said a whole bunch of nothing. His numbers are correct. I believe they're correct. He didn't really state a whole bunch of numbers. He just says we threw millions of dollars at these things and maybe they've worked. You could look into it and say that his numbers are incorrect, but essentially it doesn't matter because everyone knows that the rent assistance program is the number one thing about renters. It doesn't do anything, and he didn't really say a whole lot else. He said, we're going to cut down on people buying. We've cut down on people buying. Go to King's Cross, man, in the city in Sydney. Like, it's all foreign owned. Massive developments. Barangaroo is a massive development that's foreign owned. Like, people should see through this because he's lying. Also, the moderator interrupted and he no-sold it. So I'm almost tempted to give Scott Morrison the win here just on principle. But no, not a whole lot said. Millions of dollars going to investment tank groups that you may or may not see the reward from. Nothing actual bullet pointed. Albo pretty much nailed it on the head. There's not a whole lot of assistance for renters. The government's own party line that Scott Morrison's been out in public saying hasn't been necessarily good to renters. He's just a buy a house forehead. Like, there needs to be more put into people owning a house. I agree. There needs to be more put into a lot of things. Nothing was raised that really shocked me here. The government continued to just... We've thrown money at it and the problem's not fixed. Albanese's like, we need to throw money at certain areas.
Mariella's here with a health question. Mariella, if you could stand up for us. Another important issue. What have you got?
I work for the Office of the Chief Nursing and Midwifery Officer, and I'd like to ask what you're going to do to support the nursing workforce, in particular Australian nurses as opposed to international nurses, and what you're going to do to support the aged care sector in the rural and remote sector.
Oh, Mariella, thanks for the question.
And you've been asked about this as well, Mr Albanese. How are you going to get all these nurses in to do what you're saying in aged care, that is to have 24/7 care across every sector?
Before this starts, before this starts, I worked in aged care a little bit when I was a teenager, and my mum worked in aged care for years. Before this starts, I want to make it very clear. We had a royal commission. We had a royal commission into aged care, right? No one asked for this royal commission, but we had one anyway, and it was incredibly damning, and it was incredibly painful. We're a couple years removed from this, and not a whole lot's been done on the back of it, rather than demonize aged care in the media. So I'm pretty hotbed frustrated about this topic, which is why it's a good question. I want to see the answers, especially from Morrison.
How are you going to do it?
One of the things about nurses in the aged care sector, which you'd be aware of, is that some 80% of them in the aged care sector are part-time. And what they want is extra hours as well. So if you put in 24/7 nurses, which is what essentially the Royal Commission said was necessary, putting the nurses back into nursing homes. I think most people would be surprised that there aren't nurses in nursing homes now, because it seems so fundamental. It just seems such common sense. So we need to make sure that that occurs. In addition to that, we have 20,000 additional university places in areas of skill shortage. We need to train up more nurses for the jobs that will become available, because we will need more. We've got an ageing of the population, so we will need more care workers across the board. Our aged care plan isn't something that we've dreamed up. It is something that comes from the Royal Commission, a 5-point plan, 24/7 nurses in nursing homes, 215 minutes of care for our older Australians in nursing homes, better pay for aged care workers, better food and nutrition, and we're going to use Maggie Beer Foundation to assist with that, and better transparency and accountability. We want to make sure that every single dollar that goes in, we know where it's going to. Not going to profits for someone to buy a new Maserati, but going
Hello, Anglicare.
to better food and better care. Because one of the things I found incredibly shocking about the Royal Commission findings is that the interim report found that over half of aged care residents weren't getting the nutrition that they need. They're literally starving. And we had cases like food being scraped up off plates, put in a blender and served the next day as puree. Now, in 2022, we can do better than that.
PM, why has the government not funded 24/7 nurses for aged care facilities?
All right, well, so I didn't. Now I want to say I never saw this happening, but I worked at a reputable nursing home. I don't doubt that it did though, because I worked as like a casual kitchen hand for 3 hours and I earned like $18 an hour, and that was definitely more than the nurses were getting, and it was probably more than the kitchen staff were getting. I'll be as blunt as possible. They're not paid enough, and something that often goes to the wayside when you don't pay people enough is the expertise to do the job correctly. They haven't been paid enough for years. There's not enough staff. They're not paid enough. I know most nurses and RNs work like at 3 different fucking places. Like, yeah, just to make a fucking living. And they also travel hours to do it. Like, it's a shit job. It's thankless as fuck. And it's the only thing that got a royal commission in the last couple of years. Think about that one.
Marielle, is that right?
Mariella.
Mariella. And you work as a nurse?
No, I work administration for the Office of the Chief Nursing Midwifery Officer.
There's around almost 50,000 nurses who work in aged care homes across the country. And they do an amazing job. And so, of course, to the 130,000 aged care workers that work in those aged care.
That's the number.
When my father was very, very ill and he passed away in an aged care facility, and they made those last months of his life something that I'll always be very grateful for. So I think they do an absolutely amazing job, and you're right to want to ensure that
high-tier dodging going on.
I called the Royal Commission into aged care because I didn't think the aged care industry, the aged care system was working as it should, as we'd all want. And a key part of it was to ensure that all Australians, particularly as they age, that they can age with dignity. And what the Royal Commission found is that there'd been problems in our aged care system for 30 years, and they're complex and they're difficult problems. We can't just make nurses all of a sudden fall out of the sky and be able to go and meet a 24/7 commitment to have a nurse in every single aged care. Now, we have a part of our plan is in 2025, I believe, to be able to achieve that, and hopefully before then. This year...
2025? The Royal Commission was in, like, 2018. The Royal Commission into aged care was established in October 2018. 2025, bruh. What have you been doing? Have you tried paying them? Have you tried training them? Man, please. Like, come on.
16 hours a day. Because that's how many nurses we can have to go and do that. Now, if you go and make a standard of 24/7 nurses, because you asked me about rural and remote areas, if you make that the standard in aged care facilities right across Australia right now, then you will be closing aged care facilities in rural and regional communities right across the country. There's the best of intentions, I think, right across the parliament to want to be able to do more. 19.1 billion was our response to the Royal Commission to Aged Care. And it did address issues such as nutrition, a $10 a day payment per resident per day, which is now achieving at $12 a day, we're seeing when it's now actually been implemented. So nutrition is important, that care is important. We are training more nurses and we need to train more nurses. But aged care is complex and difficult. There are no simple solutions. You can't all of a sudden say that there's going to be all of these nurses to go in there, because if you make it a standard, then you have to hold that standard. And if you applied that today, you'd be shutting down aged care facilities right across the country.
Mariella, thank you very much.
Are we calling that an interrupt? It was fucking close. You can see immediately again. Look, we're pausing again. We're going to pause a lot. Fuck it. We're going to pause a lot. There's a lot being said, not a whole lot actually being said. $10 a day for food is not the right target, and I think the right target came there from Labor when it was like, we're actually just going to get nutritionalists in, fund the program, and make sure the food is like standard across the board. He said something interesting of like, if you want 24/7 nursing care, you're going to lose a lot of rural nursing and aged care facilities. Citation fucking needed. Citation fucking needed. If the government was savvy about the way that they pushed money, nothing would close because they can fund it. But they're not savvy about it. I'm pretty sure they were told this in the report of like, if you actually just put the money where it needs to be, you can fucking keep these facilities loaded until you get the nursing staff that's trained to do it. No one's saying that the nursing quality at like 4 a.m. needs to be good. There just needs to be nurses available doing that shift, rather than the one registered nurse that works until like morning when admin staff arrive. $10 a day is ridiculous, because it's such a stupid thing to claim as well, because like everyone now, think about it. Think about how you would live trying to fucking buy food at $10 a day. You'd get one meal. Breakfast, lunch, dinner at $10. Sorry, $12. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner at $12. $12. You'd never. Well, no way. You can't fucking, that's not feasible. And it was a dumb thing to fucking, it was dumb to reference that. But on the real though, it's like 2025, it's been 7 years since the Royal Commission, bro. This man personally, this man right here, this face right here. That's the man that did the Royal Commission. It's been 4 years now, and he's saying it's going to be 7 years until they actually enact anything. Tam hit the nail on the head. 2025 is an election year. You have to pay to go into aged care. It's not subsidized, and it's not cheap. It's not cheap for a reason. Again, it feels like Liberals missed the the basis of the question. Also, again, I hate to be the bearer of this news, but the Liberals have been in power for 10 years and the situation has just got worse and worse and worse. And it continues to get worse after a Royal Commission. They're not doing anything. Their policy isn't doing anything. He didn't say anything new. He talked about what they've been doing. And what they're doing isn't good enough.
Much for that very important question.
Can I just add something about the workforce? The government did respond to some of the recommendations of the Royal Commission.
Oh, did they, Albo?
But the missing pieces were all about workforce. Nothing there except one-off payments to people who are aged care workers. 2 payments, one was supposed to happen in March, the other one in May, but it all ends as soon as people have cast their votes. The truth is that the Royal Commission found that unless we do something about increasing wages of people who are aged care workers, then we won't have a workforce. Unless we do something about addressing the 215 minutes of care, then the pressure that aged care workers that I've spoken to right around the country mean that they'll leave the industry. And that's why we need a plan that includes a plan for workforce. And that's the missing piece that just isn't there in the government's response.
We're going to move on to Roger now. Roger, if you could stand up and ask.
I'm calling that an interrupt. I'm calling that an interrupt. Like, Albanese's got the floor to respond. Like, Albanese's got the floor to respond. He's responding. You let him time to respond. You prick. Fucking interrupting cunt.
Thank you. The proposal for an anti-corruption commission at a Commonwealth or federal level has been described by some of the greatest legal minds in this country as a toothless tiger at the beck and call of government. And I'd like to know what the two gentlemen here would offer to give that some teeth so that it can act independently of government, especially with public hearings.
Prime Minister, first of all. Roger.
Yeah.
This, you know when people ask you questions, but they're really loaded? This feels like this man's fucking asking a question, but he's already like, oh, I'm about to fucking mince you up. It's a good question, but he really felt like he was like, you know, going for it. Top legal minds, toothless tiger.
Our proposal for a Commonwealth Integrity Commission, let me start off by saying this: ensuring integrity right across the Commonwealth government, not just obviously politicians, of course, but right across the public service, because one of the differences between a Commonwealth government and a state government is that a state government, there are these commissions, they deal with gambling and they deal with racing and they deal with liquor licensing and development and many of those issues. And I'm sure you've seen many examples of whether it's at local government or a state government level where those issues have been the real subject of those sort of corruption allegations. At a Commonwealth level, you're dealing with things like immigration decisions and tax office and things of that nature. So there's a different set of issues you're dealing with. Our proposal for a Commonwealth Integrity Commission, which has 357 pages in legislation and a budget of $60 million, which is in the budget. We've already spent $50 million applying that to the Australian Commission for Law Enforcement Integrity, which they police the Home Affairs Department, the Federal Police, these sorts of organisations. That already exists to ensure that integrity is upheld in those important things. We have that legislation. It deals with criminal matters. It is not a kangaroo court. It is not something that is trying to trial people in the media. It's not about who your boyfriend is or things like that. I've seen these integrity commissions in my own home state of New South Wales, and I've got to say I haven't been impressed. And that's not the model I would like to see at the Commonwealth.
Is this motherfucker really talking about how the New South Wales Premier got pulled into an ICAC because she was quite literally corrupt and funding things for her boyfriend in Parliament? Yeah, that's exactly what a corruption investigation unit should be looking at. What is he talking about? He's not said anything. He's like, oh man, look, we can't set up a federal ICAC. There's just too much to police. All of the things that he mentioned there have ombudsman. Ombudsman is like the number one perfect fucking piece of like socialist. It's beautiful for like actually reporting issues for different fucking things. Police have their own ombudsman. It's IA. different things have their own ombudsman in the workplace so that you can report issues. What he's talking about fucking doesn't make any sense. Like, he has not said a word, essentially.
Okay. I would like to see a serious commission that deals with criminal matters. We've got our legislation, 357 pages, and our budget for it of 60 million ready to go.
Sure. Mr Albanese, your response? Just trying to get through as many questions as we can.
Thanks very much, Roger, for the question.
Thanks for the question, man. Just thanks for the question,
where we need to restore faith in the political system. Now, I think overwhelmingly, people go into politics for all the right reasons, whether they be Labor or Liberal or minority party people. But the truth is...
This motherfucker said people go into politics for the right reasons. Man, Peter Dutton's in politics, you fucking... What are you talking about, Albo? Fucking... Come on, son.
There's a stench around a whole range of issues in Canberra. When you have a block of land that was worth $3 million, that the government paid $30 million for it. When you have donations for a legal case that the minister at the time said he couldn't be transparent about where the money was coming from. There's issues of sports rorts and commuter car park rorts and abuse of taxpayers' money. Now, what we need...
It's fucking weird that all of the things that he just brought up happened under, like, the New South Wales Liberals.
Is a national anti-corruption commission with teeth. One which is able to control its own investigations. The government's model would have ministers determine whether they can be investigated or not. It needs to be independent, at arm's length. It needs to have the capacity to have public hearings if it deems that that is in the public interest. And it does need to have some teeth. And Scott is very critical of the ICAC. Let me say this about the New South Wales Anti-Corruption Commission. It has found both Liberal MPs and Labor MPs and ministers of all sorts of persuasions and mayors guilty of corruption. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. I want an anti-corruption commission that will hold the political system to account, because I believe in our democracy it's essential that people have faith in the democratic processes, and that's not there at the moment.
Roger, thank you very much for that. I'll get to our next question in just a moment. Just one from me. When are we going to get rid of the scare campaigns at some point? You, Labor, running with this campaign.
I'm sorry?
I'll get to our next question in just a moment. Just one from me. When are we going to get rid of the scare campaigns at some point? You, Labor, running with this campaign about the cashless debit card going to pensioners. It's not going to happen. The Liberal Party saying you're not going to turn back the boats. You've committed to exactly the same policy. Is it time to scrap the scare campaigns and have an honest debate?
What the fuck are we talking about? What do you mean scare campaigns? Excuse me? Hello? What? When things enter the public sphere, they are culpable to criticism. You're allowed to criticize shit that goes into the fucking sphere. What do you mean scare campaigns? A lot of things can be true at the same time and not be a scare campaign. The cashless card system is fucking bonkers. It's awful. It's awful from pillar to post. It starts bad and it gets worse the more you read into it. Labor's policy on turning back boats is bad. It's the same as the Liberals. It's bad. These are not scare campaigns. You're allowed to fucking talk about this shit. What the fuck is this question? And why did he need to stop the momentum of an anti-corruption question in order to ask this stupid bullshit? If this is going to be an hour of debating where both of the politicians come off looking, yeah, the same, but this fucking idiot in the corner comes off looking like a cocksucker, I'm going to be really upset.
Like we are tonight.
Well, it's important on take the cashless debit card. We're going to get rid of it. They should get rid of it. A lot of people don't know what the cashless debit card is. Scott is from...
But you're also saying they're going to extend it to...
Whoa! Whoa! Hold on, dickhead. You asked a question and then you just straight interrupted him. Fuck you. That's going on the count. Take a shot.
They're not doing that.
Well, they themselves, Anne Ruston, as the minister, has said that it's a platform and they've left open the potential extension of this. What we're saying very clearly is that it should be gotten rid of, that people, particularly a political party that speaks about power of the individual, The cashless debit card not only tells you what you can buy, it's who you can buy it from, which is why we will get rid of it.
Your response, PM, on the boats question, because they've said basically imitation's the best form of flattery. They're copying your creation.
Let me deal with
said that?
a few of the inaccuracies of what Anthony just said. The Commonwealth government, my government, our government, is not putting the cashless...
I also want to talk about... Hold on. What is this? What's going on? What is fucking happening? He asked a question about the cashless card. Anthony Albanese answered the question about it. He's not even going to let Morrison talk about the cashless card. He wants him to talk about boats. What's happening? We're 21 minutes into the fucking debate and the moderator's just trying to the moderator started by we should stop the scare campaign, and now he's scare campaigning. We're completely derailed. What is happening? I'm scared and confused. This is this is typical Sky News fucking weirdism, where it's how we're gonna stop the scare. Hang on, let me scare campaign the public real quick. But are you guys gonna stop the scare campaigning? I know people should be scared about immigrants and cashless card, but can you guys talk about it a little bit? I really want you to stop the scare campaigning though. It's like mood whiplash, and it's like I'm being gaslit in real time by a fucking moderator, fucking janitor over here with these stupid fucking questions. Please.
Debit card to pensioners. It's not happening. Not happening. So if you've been called or got one of those pieces of material that's been sent to you by the Labor Party saying we're going to do that, we're not going to do that. I can assure you we're not going to do that. Now, the Labor Party wants to get rid of the cashless debit card where it has been used in communities where we have gone into vulnerable communities and we've said, how can we help to get people to better manage their income when they're on very vulnerable situations? We've worked with them, we've consulted with them. They have agreed that they wanted those cards to come into those communities, and what it works like is just a debit card. Now, we're all pretty used to using debit cards, I'm sure. And it's just an electronic card, which means that for people who are in very vulnerable situations, are able to manage their income better, which means they can put food on the table for their kids, they can avoid having their money being going off to other things which aren't helping their families and dealing with their cost of living issues, and giving vulnerable Australians the support they need to get up back on their feet and be able to get forward to their lives. Now, we've seen very good... Boats, well, I'd love to talk about
I know you...
Motherfucker, please. I'm sorry, but why? Why is he interrupting? That's 5. It's going straight up on the board. 5 shots, we'd already be fucked. Bro, what about the boats? Please, for the love of God, talk about the boats. I need you to talk about the boats. Morrison gave a pretty good answer there. Morrison dispelled a lot of the rumours and innuendo about this cashless card. I don't like it because it's basically yeah, you can really only buy this from this. You can buy this from X, Y, and Z. But they're not flooding aged communities with it. Essentially, what Anne Rushton said was, we're not ruling out putting this cashless card into aged communities. She said that they weren't going to do it, but she didn't say they were going to 100% do it. He dispelled a lot of the bad things about the cashless card, and it was a pretty good answer. And this fucking guy just jumps in dude, please, for the love of God, talk about the boats. I need you to talk about boats right the fuck now. What the fuck am I going to write in my weekend puff piece where I essentially give Rupert Murdoch a blowjob if you don't talk about the fucking boats? I get back on the party line about boats, you fucking dick. And it's just please. It's an anti-drug and alcohol scheme. It's essentially putting money into the hands of people, but controlling where it goes. So rather than prop up education and groceries and stuff in the area and trying to offset the price of that, you just give people money and let them do it. Best investment ever. Here we go. Talk about the fucking boats.
Should we look at the policy as opposed to...
Yeah, no, I can look at the policy. Now, I designed Operation Sovereign Borders.
And 100%, what Poker's referencing is 100% correct. Because it controls where your money goes, it's not great. right? Because you can't buy essentially from the good guys in this case. You can't use the money for what you want, so you can't sit on it. You have to use it for whatever the fuck else. It's really bad in practice. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. However, the scare campaign has been about them flooding aged communities with it, and also that it's not very good. One of those is true. The other one's not quite true. But, oh God, speak about the boats. Do not have nuanced conversations about something that may be controversial. Speak about the fucking boats. Did Scott Morrison create Operation Sovereign Borders? I don't know. I don't think so. I thought it was Dutton. Yeah, I was going to say that it would probably be Dutton. It's a border operation led by the Australian Defence Force. The operation is the outcome of a 2013 federal election policy of the coalition, which commenced on 18th of September 2013 after the election of the Abbott government. Now, let's have a look and see who the ministers are of the 2013 Abbott government. Julie Bishop, Foreign Affairs. So I assume it's a Julie Bishop thing. God, figuring out who the fuck was in certain seats. When the fucking first took over is a gigantic pain in the ass. Display capture. Just give me a display cap real quick. Oh, there we go. Tony Abbott was a minister. Warren Truss was deputy. And for infrastructure and regional. Julie Bishop was foreign affairs, so I assume it would be Julie Bishop. Abbott's was employment. Brandis was the AG. Turnbull was comms. Dutton was health and sport. Scott Morrison was immigration and border protection. I guess he probably did create this. Sometimes you look.
And the turn back policy of our government, which ended the deaths at sea, 17 detention centres. That
is an incredibly bold statement.
We closed that Labor Party opened, and we ended all of that. And it's a very hard thing to do. General Molan worked with me in opposition and many other ex-defence people to ensure that we could do that properly. Now, I can tell you, it's not easy. And you have to believe in it. You have to understand it. You have to understand how to do it safely. You have to understand how it works with all the other areas of your border protection policy, which is temporary protection visas and offshore processing. Other countries around the world have said Australia got that right. Now, all I'm simply saying is, you know,
citation
I'll do it
needed.
Because I've done it.
Mr. Albanese,
and we did stop the boats.
Will you do it?
Yes, we will do it.
Fucking shut up! Jesus Christ! This fucking guy, man. For the love of Christ, please stop doing this. Albanese, please talk about the boat. Albanese, I need you to talk about the boats. I need you to talk about the boats.
And have you got the determination? The PM's saying you...
7. It's 2 in a row. Straight up.
You've got to be focused and committed. You haven't always been.
I was the Deputy Prime Minister when we established offshore processing. I was the Deputy Prime Minister when that happened. And what we've said is we have the same position on offshore processing, on settlement in third countries, and the same position on boat turnbacks. But what we also now have the same position on... You didn't have the same position on turnbacks. Now what we have the same position
Shut up, Morrison.
As well...
He let you talk.
Is
let him talk.
accepting the deal that was there from New Zealand that has been on the table since Julia Gillard and John Key, all those years ago, decided it a decade ago. And if that had been accepted, that would have resolved that situation much more quickly. I'm pleased the government has now accepted.
So we shouldn't have any doubts about you on this?
None. Whatsoever.
So can I ask a question?
Position is very...
Holy shit, what is happening?
Very clear.
So when you were Deputy Prime Minister, why didn't you support turnbacks then?
You weren't proposing. You were not proposing.
I'm sorry, we were. It was our policy.
You were not
Turnbacks were our policy before the 2013 election. I was the shadow immigration minister. I designed the policy. So you were on the National Security Committee, I think for the first time at that time. And so why did you not support turnbacks?
I was on the National Security Committee. We had established offshore processing just in 2013 when I became Deputy Prime Minister. That was the first step. That was the first step.
So you were going to do turnbacks?
Oh my God! Control it! No. What is this? This is not what is happening. This is fucking this is a shambles all of a sudden. What is the moderator doing? This is where he should be stepping in and going, shut the fuck up and let him answer the question.
No, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I just wanted to be clear.
But why is it, Scott, that you're always looking for a division? Not looking for
No, I'm just looking for the accuracy and the truth.
Well, the truth is we support boat turnbacks.
But you didn't when you were Deputy Prime Minister and the boats were coming at 30 and 40 a week.
And we'll do it. What we did was we established offshore processing.
Vladimir.
What happened for like 5 minutes there? I fucking blacked out and turned into like a vicious rage. Because like I don't support either of these fucking policies. Dude. Scott Morrison came into Parliament off the back of like being the fucking guy who was the brains behind the "Where the bloody hell are you" campaign. That's actually true. And Albanese was the Deputy Prime Minister when they started doing offshore processing. Both of these things are true, and now they're supporting turn back the boats. Nothing actually was said there. It was like, haha, it was essentially Scott Morrison was like, I did it first. My dad can beat up your dad. And it's like, what the fuck is happening? And then the moderator just stood there like, I did this. I created this. It's like, bruh.
Hi guys, I'd like to know a little bit about what your policies are around the electric batteries space, or for an investment perspective, and also how you're going to help Australians get into electric vehicles.
All right.
So the battery question and EVs.
Yeah. This is a part of a future made in Australia.
What the fuck? Hold on a minute. What was this guy? Hold on.
EVs.
Face, dude. Dude, you can tell he's about to love this question. Look at his face. This guy wants to talk about electric vehicles. I want to talk about boats.
It's a part of a future made in Australia. We need to make more things here. It makes no sense that everything that goes into a battery, copper, lithium, nickel, is all here, we send it offshore and the batteries are made. This is a potential major industry here in Australia, and we need to do more to create those high-value jobs. I support exporting our resources, but where possible, we should be value-adding here rather than seeing the value add somewhere else and the jobs created somewhere else, and that's what we'll do. On EVs, the Prime Minister said during the 2019 campaign that electric vehicles would end the weekend. They said that they couldn't tow your trailer, couldn't tow your boat. It was all nonsense. The truth is that electric vehicles are here. They will continue to grow in the future. We will reduce the taxes on electric vehicles, particularly a measure that will make a difference is removing the fringe benefits tax for all those below the luxury car tax threshold, because that's how a whole range of cars get into the fleet.
PM?
It was just over 12 months ago, Vladimir, that I was in Newcastle and we broke ground on a battery manufacturer right here in Australia. So they are being made here, and they're going to be made here more and more. Angus Taylor's here tonight, and as part of his plan to ensure that we get to net zero by 2050, we're investing
2050. Net zero by 2050. I just want you guys to understand how fucking far away that is. I would be 50 years old before we hit net zero? It was a good answer. It was a great answer. But Tam's also correct. If they're not going to mandate electric-only sales, then nothing's going to happen. And if they keep fringe benefit taxing people buying electric vehicles because they're considered luxury, then it's really not going to happen. Good answer.
$2 billion between now and 2030 on ensuring that we're developing the clean energy technology, which includes batteries, that will enable us to transition our economy, and not just ours, by the way, but the economies in our region as well, to ensure that they can get access to this technology. Now, Anthony is right about critical minerals and rare earths. These rare earths and critical minerals, particularly coming out of Western Australia, they are a major opportunity for Australia.
He's going to talk about
and
mining.
Back in 2019, when I went to the White House, I said to the President, this is what we need to do together. Critical minerals and rare earths we can mine in Australia, but we need to make sure that the take-off agreements that need to be in place to justify the investment in the first place can be achieved. And so we work with Japan, and we're working with India. That's called the Quad. Japan,
correct.
India, and the United States and Australia.
I don't really want to pause because he's making a pretty good point. But yeah, mining companies, aka Clive Palmer, aka United Palmer Australia, offshored all his fucking money, taxes, and minerals to China at no recompense to the Australian government. The technology's already there. The government refuses to invest in them, and time framing 2050 just means that they can do it whenever the fuck they want to do it in the next 28 years.
We've come together as leaders, and critical minerals and rare earths development in Australia, which will give us many opportunities, but also the processing of those. A great Australian company, Lynas, is a company that's doing this right now. There's also another Australian company in Western Australia we've just committed over $1 billion to make sure that they can get those processing and resources development activities in place right now. So we have that plan to achieve that. And I think Australia can be an energy powerhouse continuing in the future. We have been up until now, but as we move over the next 20 or so years, and particularly over the next 10, we're going to position Australia well to do that again.
Thank you.
What resources company did he name there? Did anyone catch it? I didn't catch it. How much money are we going to give into these companies? Did he actually say anything? He said lines, which is true.
There's also another Australian company in Western Australia we've just committed over $1 billion to make sure that they can get those processing and resources development activities in place right now. So we have that plan to achieve that. And I think Australia can be an energy powerhouse continuing in the future.
Didn't say anything.
We have been up until now, but as we move over the next 20 or so years, and particularly over the next 10, we're going to position Australia well to do that again.
Thank you. And we have Catherine now.
Anyone else catching the numbers bullshit? They're ready to give $1 billion to this mining company to do a thing that probably won't cost $1 billion, but 60 mil is enough to aged care. There's a massive difference in numbers there.
Hello. I have a 4-year-old autistic son. We are grateful to receive funds through the NDIS, but I've heard many stories of people having their funds cut recently under the current government, including our own. I've been told to give my son the best future I should vote Labor. Can you please tell me what the future of the NDIS looks like under your government?
Well, the NDIS is a Labor scheme, so let's see.
Well, thank you, Catherine. What's your son's name?
Ethan.
Ethan, he's 4.
Scott.
I can't.
Scott.
Jenny and I have been blessed. We've got 2 children that haven't had to go through that. And so for parents...
Whoa! 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 Scott Morrison, ladies and gentlemen. Listen. Me and my wife personally, we're blessed because we don't have autism in our family. You are not blessed. How fucking dare you be not blessed like this? I'm blessed. You've got autism. Like what, Scott? Jesus Christ. Scott Morrison, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Morrison. The man has terminal foot in mouth. He cannot get the foot out of his mouth. He can't do it. He doesn't mean this. I'm going to play a little bit of defense. He didn't mean it like that, but that's what he said.
Parents with children who are disabled, I can only try and understand your aspirations for those children. And I think that is the beauty of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And I pay credit to Julia Gillard, who initiated this when she was Prime Minister. It was a very complex system. It's bigger than Medicare now. It actually costs more every year than it costs to run Medicare, and those costs will...
I'm sorry, it only costs more because you keep gutting Medicare, you fucking dickhead.
...continue to increase. But the thing I love about the NDIS is it's not welfare. What it's designed to do is help people with disabilities be able to live their best possible life and to give them the tools, like my brother-in-law Gary, who has multiple sclerosis, and he gets support through the NDIS to ensure that he has the wheelchair he needs and the aids that he can have at home to work as a call centre operator and do things like that. And for young children, it's about the early intervention work that needs to be done to help them be more able as life goes on. Now, we are fully funding the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
AKA welfare.
It's a difficult scheme to manage because every single person who has a disability is different. There's no cookie-cutter approach to the NDIS. You need to tailor the programs to each and every single individual. And so it is a scheme that is still building and it still has faults. But what we are working to do is ensure that we're getting the assessments right, that we're getting the programs right, and we're supporting people to navigate the system because it can be a very difficult system. You've probably had challenges with that, knowing what you can get access to, what you can't. And the people who work in the NDIS and the agency, I think, do a great job in trying to help people understand how the scheme can best help them. But I think it's one of the greatest innovations in social policy this country has ever ambitiously embarked on. It's expensive. It's more expensive than Medicare, but I believe it's worth investing in.
Catherine, you happy with that?
It's only more expensive than Medicare because this motherfucker makes Medicare not expensive when they got it. He's in control of the NDIS. When he sits there and he talks about how hard it is to get onto it and how difficult it is to navigate it, he's in fucking control of it. He can make it not hard. It's his job as the Prime Minister of the fucking country to make that scheme actually work effectively. He's just shitting on himself. From the budget website, the government with $1.5 billion to new industries in the Northwest. More exporting, yay. Dude, what is this?
Response or is anything you
I'm interested in the funding cuts. You talk about early intervention. So before he's 5, he should have the most intensive treatment. Yet we've had our funding cut by 30% at his...
Poker, I love you and you're great, but you have to listen to what he's saying. You have to turn that rage against him because he's not helping you. He's just speaking platitudes.
First review with no
when governments do this and they don't actually speak anything, you have to listen. You have to listen. It's very important. He talked about the scheme being expensive like 3 times. No one fucking cares, dickhead. I don't care how expensive it is. I don't think she cares that either. This lady is furious.
Reason why. So I can't access that intensive therapy.
Well, I'd be interested to know...
So I want to hear that question again because it was very good.
Can't funding cut though. Before in the funding cuts, you talk about early intervention. So before he's 5, he should have the most intensive treatment. Yet we've had our funding cut by 30% at his first review with no reason why. So I can't access that intensive therapy.
Well, I'd be interested to know the specific case that you're referring to, and I'm happy to get those details after. As you know, assessments are done along the way. It's a large program, and we're trying to ensure that the support that is being given is well targeted, and we're able to provide support to many thousands of people who use this scheme. But I'd be happy to look at and have my ministers also look at your case.
Catherine, we'll do that after the forum. We'll come and find you and put you in touch. Mr Albanese, your response on this?
Well, thanks very much, Catherine, for,
thanks for the question,
sharing
Catherine.
Your story of young Ethan and the challenges that he faces with funding cuts being imposed on him. Unfortunately, Ethan's story isn't an isolated one. There are parents and every member of Parliament is getting constituent representations from people saying, I have had a family member's funding cut. I met in Canberra with Bill Shorten, one of the architects of the NDIS. It was a proud Labor reform. It's always Labor that does the big changes that make a difference to people's lives, make sure that people aren't left behind. And the NDIS is one of them, a proud Labor reform that we will fix. Because what's happening with some of these assessments done in isolation, one example that I had was Ellie, who's a Brisbane woman who came to Canberra to...
Jacko from out back's got like 17 different fucking disability... Come on. Stop.
Tell her story, and we held a press conference in Parliament House. She needs a colostomy bag. And part of the assessment that she had was that she could reuse colostomy bags rather than be given new ones, just wash them out. Now, that places, because of her health condition, her health potentially in acute danger because she's susceptible to infection. And the end-up cost is even more. So if we're sensible about this and get it right, one of the things about the NDIS is that it certainly isn't welfare. All of the analysis shows if you allow everyone to participate in society, you'll get better outcomes, obviously better social outcomes, but you'll also get better economic outcomes as well.
Catherine, thank you so much. Mr Albanese...
Kieran, just before you go
if you can quickly, please.
Anthony's right. It's a great reform. As I said, I acknowledge the work of Bill as well as Julia. It is often Labor. They started medical...
Julia Gillard and Bill Shorten, honourable MPs. He's just using first names for some strange fucking reason. Hello?
Care as well. But it's always the Liberals and Nationals have to work out how to pay for these things. And that's what we've done over the last 8 years. Now, I make this point very importantly because I said at the start that this election is really about the economy. And if you don't have a strong economy, then programs like the National Disability Insurance Scheme, just like the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme when Labor were in power last time, they couldn't list medicines because they couldn't manage money. And so one of the most important things I can do to ensure that the National Disability Insurance Scheme is fully funded is we continue to run a strong economy, manage our finances well, keep our AAA credit rating. We're one of only 9 countries in the world who have done that through the pandemic.
Well, I've got to jump in there.
I hope you do, Albo, because what he said makes no sense. Like, oh, Labor gave us this scheme, so we've intentionally let it fall to the wayside by not paying for it, because you just don't know where the money's going to come from.
Because it isn't just the NDIS, it is also... The PBS was another Labor initiative. Labor does the...
For people who don't know what the PBS is, I'm pretty sure everyone in the chat knows what the PBS is, but let's just look at it. It's the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme. It lets medicines be available to patients at a government-subsidised price. So stuff like insulin and such.
The big...
was also a Labor thing.
Does the big things. And we also do the big reforms. And what the Prime Minister has attempted to say there is we have an issue paying for things. Well, if you look at the big economic reforms, we just went through 3 decades of consecutive economic growth because of the Hawke-Keating reforms that happened. We then went through the global financial crisis better than just about any economy in the world because of the actions of the Rudd and Gillard government. And while we were doing it, we did the NDIS, we did paid parental leave, we did a fibre-based national broadband network.
Liberals fuck that.
Labor does the
Liberals
big
fuck
reforms.
Everything.
And we just had a debate before about renewables and electric vehicles. This government have held us back. You can't be scared of the future. You have to shape the future. Otherwise, the future will shape you.
Go in, son!
The problem with this government is that it's just treading water, not pursuing any significant economic, social or environmental reforms. And if we continue down that track, things will just stay the same. I think we can have a better future.
There it is. Inject that fucking speech into my veins. Play that speech fucking everywhere. Look, listen, here's some free PR. Free PR for the Labor government. Just play that soundbite over and over and over again because it's fucking true. The Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme has been gutted to fuck. It doesn't do anything. As Deck said right there, epilepsy meds aren't covered. A lot of shit isn't covered. It's been a decade of Liberals in charge and the fucking thing is shit. right? The NDIS, Labor brought it up, and Labor brought the NDIS and the pharmaceutical benefit scheme while the rest of the world was having a fucking recession. We can pay for this shit perfectly easily. The argument that Labor doesn't know how to balance financials is wrong. It's been wrong forever. It's been wrong for the longest fucking time. The Liberals just gut everything so that their bottom line looks good. All these big schemes come in from Labor because they fucking know what they're doing, and they've got experts behind the scenes that know how to fucking do this, and the Liberals stabilize everything by gutting the absolute fuck out of everything so that the bottom line looks good. He flagged it before when he was answering the question. Scott Morrison said it. Like, the NDIS is more expensive than Medicare. Medicare is for every single fucking person in the country. How can the NDIS cost more? Because they gut the fuck out of Medicare at every single thing. They just keep cutting funds for it so that there's no debt. And Medicare doesn't cover dental. Why? I don't fucking know. Because it cut the fuck out of it. Jesus fucking wept, man.
As you said, it's doing much better than comparable nations through the pandemic. But when you look at the budget, our net debt is going to peak at about a third of national income. You've got deficits out as far as the eye can see. If you win, PM, will you turn your attention to budget repair? Because these are wonderful initiatives that we're talking about here, but will your focus turn to budget repair if you win? And Mr Albanese, your response to that as well. This obviously has to be a priority at some point.
I'm happy to go. In the last 12 months, the budget has turned around by over $100 billion. That is the single biggest turnaround in a budget in 70 years. And the reason for that is we've got people into work, off welfare and into work. That is the major way you turn a budget around, as well as making sure you control your expenditure. Our debt has risen because it had to, because we all know when we went into the pandemic, we were facing the biggest economic crisis we had seen since the Great Depression. To give you an example, the economic recession that we went through because of the pandemic was 30 times worse than what occurred during the global financial crisis. 30 times worse. And we've come through with employment outcomes compared to the global financial crisis, back happened over a decade ago, 50% better.
Who was in charge when we went through the financial crisis?
We have 400,000, almost 400,000 more people in work today than before the pandemic. Now, that didn't happen by accident. When we stared into the abyss
it was K-Rudd
of the global pandemic, not knowing how many people would die, how many businesses would be ruined. The Treasurer and I, Josh Frydenberg and I, got together with the then Finance Minister, Matthias Cormann, and we came up with JobKeeper. It saved 700,000 jobs, and I believe many, many lives, because Australians were thinking they were going to work that day on the day we announced it, and it would be their last day in work, that apprentices would go, and that the Australian economy would be ruined. So, yes,
I'll go back to look at his face after this.
We saved the Australian economy, we kept Australians in work, and as a result, now we have an economic plan which means we can grow our economy into the future. Our debt, even still, is about a third of the debt in the United States and United Kingdom and France and nations like that, because of the good management we'd had prior to the pandemic.
Mr Albanese, have you got a plan for budget repair if you win?
Well, the truth is that whoever was in government during the pandemic would have had to have had an economic stimulus plan. We called for wage subsidies before the government adopted them. We were calling for it, the union movement was calling for it, small business was calling for it, and indeed the government said that wage subsidies were a dangerous idea. That's not true. We're a dangerous idea.
No, it's true.
We have no problem with
economic
stimulus in terms of the need for one. What we have a problem with is the waste. There was too much waste there, and this has been a wasteful government. They changed the national broadband network model from fibre-based. They said that it would cost $29 billion, and it's cost almost double that for an inferior model, and now they're having to go back and fix it. They spent $1 billion of your money on taxpayer advertising promoting themselves.
Yes.
And before the pandemic had hit, it's important to remember that they had already doubled the debt. before the pandemic had hit.
So beyond the waste, is there anything you would do?
Was that an interrupt? I don't know if Albo was stopped there, Mr. Speaker. Also, why is it just constantly... It wasn't answering the question. You know what? True. Why do we keep focusing on the audience when Albanese speaks?
Different.
Well, what we need to do is that we have a plan to grow the economy. We have a plan to grow back stronger through our National Reconstruction Fund of $15 billion that will support new industries, that will support old industries being transformed. We have a plan to make sure Australians can fill the jobs through our TAFE plan, fee-free TAFE in areas of skills shortage, our additional university places. We need to have a plan to grow the economy, and what clean energy represents is just that.
Okay,
it's an opportunity.
We'll bring in Daniel now. Daniel,
that was an interrupt. Just quietly, I'm gonna bring Daniel in. Danny boy in the back row, please interrupt this. Please fucking interrupt. Please, someone other than me needs to interrupt.
What's your question?
So I have a question for the honourable gentleman in front of me in regards to sole traders and small businesses and of course micro businesses as well. During the
the fuck is a micro business? I'm sorry? Hold on. What the fuck is a micro business? What is a micro business? Micro business is a subcategory of small business defined by its small number of employees. Oh, it's just a small business. It's a really small business. Fuck, we just keep creating fucking terms. It's another tax bracket.
Pandemic, I think it's fair to say that a lot of the small businesses like myself, we were left out in the cold. JobKeeper was not accessible to us as we were not employees of our businesses. There's a lot of friends around that were sole traders, they were contracted to others, they were not eligible as well. We were told that we should dip into our super.
Yes,
our
my
future,
friend.
that we'll no longer be able to attain if we draw down on it now. So moving forward into the endemic phase of COVID-19, what is...
Is it an endemic phase? I think it's still a pandemic. I think the numbers are just as strong as they ever were. Mostly because people have stopped giving a fuck. Look, no one's wearing a fucking mask.
Your plans to help small businesses, sole traders and micro businesses moving forward.
Thank you, Daniel. PM, first to you.
Well, first of all, we've cut taxes for small business down to 25%.
Citation needed.
Second of all, we've provided the instant asset write-off, and what that means is if you go and spend on a new piece of plant and equipment, a coffee machine, a fridge, a new machine in your tool kit, then you can write that off 100%. And so we've lowered taxes for small businesses because it is tough. One of the key things that small business have to deal with is their cash flow. And in this budget, we've provided 120% tax deduction for those you would train, but also on the investments you have to make in upgrading to cloud accounting, for example, and all the data and the digital technologies that you need to run a modern small business. You know, over the course of the pandemic, I think everybody learnt that we're in a digital economy now, and we need to move on to that. And so many businesses...
Albo laughing like the shitty NBN. Oh.
During the pandemic, adjusted amazingly well. They were doing one thing before, but they worked out how to access customers another way. And we need businesses to be able to be agile. And one of the things we've been trying to do, we tried to do it in the middle of the pandemic, but we weren't able to get support from the Labor Party, was to make the industrialisation system simpler.
You're the majority government.
Just more practical. There was no ideology in it. It was just to make sure that we're able to have more practical rules that people would be able to follow, supporting particularly small businesses to understand the rules that they are so they wouldn't get caught paying people less or paying more people more than they had to ensure that they could manage their cash flow. But if you move your business to a digital model, one of the most important things you do is you get paid on time. And cash flow, we've reduced the amount of payment times, particularly for small businesses, and we've challenged and got the corporates to do the same thing to reduce their payment times for small businesses. Because for small businesses, it's all about cash flow. Keeping more of what they earn so you can invest it back into your business.
This fucking guy, the guy stood up and asked a question about, like, how the fuck we're not going to stop losing money as a small business. And this guy's just talked about cash flow for 10 minutes. Huh? Did he answer the question? I don't think so.
Yeah, can I ask Michael what business you're in? What? Daniel. Sorry, Daniel.
I own a cafe. I am actually closely related to the aviation sector as well.
Bro, he's a fucking barista. Fuck this guy.
Because my cafe is on a local commercial airfield, and my trade qualification is in general cookery, but I'm a bulk production chef. So if I was in holding out my previous job, I wouldn't have a job because the aviation sector crashed, and the food that I was producing is no longer in demand. I was lucky that I could transition into my own business, and I was lucky that I had support of my wife, but many times we were hand to mouth. We haven't made super contributions at all.
Yeah.
Dude, what's this guy talking about? Just buy an aviation company and then claim it back on tax, bro. That's what Scott Morrison said. Fucking just do it, dude. What are you talking about?
Well, thanks, Daniel. You're just one of many who've done it so tough during this period. And I acknowledge how difficult it's been. Many people did get left behind in various sectors of the economy because they weren't eligible for the various payments which are there. Now, we supported the small business tax cut for companies below $50 million in terms of turnover to 25%. We supported the changes on the asset write-off because they were there in place when the government was elected and they withdrew them and then put them back. We don't think they should have been.
Inject that fucking soundbite everywhere.
Been withdrawn in the first place. We think that as well in terms of taking pressure off your small business. What we need to do is to have a plan as well to lift wages throughout the economy. One of the things that's happening is that if people haven't got enough money to spend, if they're struggling to get by, they can't afford to go to the local cafe. They cut back. And that's one of the things that we're seeing that's holding back our economy. Now, Scott spoke about the industrial relations changes that were rejected in the parliament that he said he will resurrect. Now, that would remove the better off overall test. That's was the problem for that legislation, which is why it was rejected. Because if you're getting rid of the better off overall test, it means you don't want people to be better off overall. Pretty common sense, really.
Is that what's happening?
No, that's not what's happening.
Did they just? Well, hold on a minute. Hold the fuck on. Did he just tell the moderator to interrupt Albanese as he's speaking? What the fuck? What the actual fuck? Huh? Huh?
What's happening?
Watch Scott Morrison.
Pretty common sense.
Hold on.
Off overall tests, it means you don't want people to be better off overall. Pretty common sense, really.
Is that what's happening?
What the fuck? What the fuck? Bruh. What is this shit? I'll be real. I don't even think Scott Morrison wanted him to straight up do it there. I think Scott Morrison's like, I got something to say about this. Let me go at the end of Albanese. And the fucking moderator's just like, yo, let me stop you right here. You're not talking about boats, so I don't care.
No, that's not what's happening, and I was very clear about this today.
Well, you said you'd introduce the legislation.
No, Anthony, what we said was we would go forward with the measures that weren't the emergency pandemic measures. And so that only related to the pandemic. Now, thank goodness, we're in a situation now where the vaccine rules are changing, the other close contact rules are going in New South Wales and in Victoria. That's fantastic. There were some emergency measures that were only for that time, and that's what that related to.
But you did try to remove the better off overall test.
They're no longer applying, and they're not part of our forward agenda.
So you've changed your position.
No, we haven't changed our position, Anthony. I'm just being very clear so you don't misrepresent it.
Let's get the next question from Martin.
Thanks.
But he is getting rid of it. They are getting rid of the better off overall. They are. They're changing it. Alvo didn't finish. He just interrupted and fucking moved on. Also, guys, thank goodness we're in a better spot, right? Just, you know, thank goodness we're just in a better spot with regards to COVID. Just thank goodness, you guys. Thank goodness. Whereas, you know, was that 50,000 new cases? Thank goodness, man. I'm so happy we're in a better spot than we were. Albert didn't finish. He is getting rid of the better off overall limit test. He didn't even deny it there. He interrupted to say fuck all.
Karen, and the question directed to both leaders. There is $4 billion in the Federal Emergency Response Fund. So far, 150 million has been allocated for both Queensland and New South Wales from this fund for recovery from the recent 2022 flood events. Both states have major needs in recovery. My question, can both leaders explain their plans and thoughts from the immediate recovery?
We've got fucking sirens going off in the background. I think a tree has fallen nearby.
And
I expect to get the SES call any second now that I need to go and help. Let's go back, actually. Sorry, I got sidetracked a little bit. This is a good question, though.
150 million has been allocated for both Queensland and New South Wales from this fund for recovery from the recent 2022 flood events. Both states have major needs in recovery. My question, can both leaders explain their plans and thoughts from the immediate recovery and longer-term flood proofing as far as possible, with the 2032 Brisbane Olympics just 10 years away, and this is the very heart of it here. Obviously, this will be a very expensive exercise, and I appreciate your thoughts on that.
Martin, thank you.
I'm interested actually to hear what Scott Morrison's got to say, because it took the fucking New South Wales Premier like a week to go and see like Lismore and flood areas, and then he was there and he just made excuses the entire fucking time. Dominic Perrottet is so bad. I can't wait for the fucking debates between him and Chris Minns. Chris Minns can speak, and Dominic Perrottet is a fucking psychopath. So that'll be fun to cover.
Mr. Albanese.
Well, thanks very much, Martin. We have been critical of the Emergency Response Fund that was created with our support, but it was created with the idea that $200 million would be spent every year, some of it on recovery, some of it on mitigation, on planning, on things like stopping flood levies, bushfire preparedness for cyclones. And yet it just stayed there. It stayed there as if it was a term deposit. And it's grown now to $4.8 billion. So what we've said is that we'll have a disaster-ready fund. $200 million every year will be spent on making sure that preparedness is done for floods, for cyclones, for bushfires, for the extreme weather events that we know from the science. Climate change tells us that it's here. And we've seen more intensity in terms of floods and bushfires in recent times. The government has acted, in our view, very strong view, and it's what I've heard here in Brisbane in particular, just too little too late to provide that investment in the first place should have happened, and then the support should have happened. The government should have exercised its power to declare a national emergency, not just in New South Wales, but in Queensland when the event happened, not wait until it was too late.
Okay, PM.
What the fuck? You're so quick to cut him. But he's right. The funds just sit there. It's standard Liberal government. The funds are there. We can point to the funds being there, but nothing's fucking happened. When were the last floods? 2020? So it was 2020 floods, or no, it was 2020 bushfires. 2021 floods, 2022 floods. And it was 2013 before that, which was borderline? Yeah, they can, like, governments can make money. 2011 was the big one, yeah. And then, so 2011 was the big one, then 2013 was the next one, and then they set up this fund that seems to have just stagnated because no one wants to use it. And there's no, like, plans to... There's no plans to build flood levees so that it doesn't get out of control really quickly. I'm not sure if you can do that without creating like a man-made river. 2016 fires, yeah, there was 2 fires actually. So there was the one before the one I was working, which would have been 2020, I want to say. Flood levies to stop this was like disaster response plans to get people out of these areas really quickly before like people die, and then clean up. And I believe that money has just stagnated for the last 10 years.
The two terrible floods we've just seen in New South Wales and Queensland, $5.2 billion is committed between the state governments and the federal government. Around 70%.
Was it 4.8 or 5.2?
70% of that is being paid by the federal government. 70%.
I think, is this one of these situations I just need to let him talk because he's going to continuously just fall down the stairs?
Around
maybe
70% of that is being paid by the federal government. 70%.
About
$1.5 billion, some $400 million right here in Queensland has already been directly paid out through what is called the disaster recovery payment and the disaster recovery allowance. They're the same payments that you saw made during the bushfires, and they've been made, and they were made very, very quickly. And in fact, the floods here in Brisbane, as I said, I was here in Brisbane when that was occurring on that Sunday night, and that Sunday night led to the terrible floods we saw in the northern rivers.
That's kind of off-brand for ScoMo. I would have imagined he'd be in fucking Hawaii.
Early that next morning, we saw more Defence Force people turn out here in Brisbane.
Yeah, me too,
quicker
Tim.
Than they did back in the Brisbane floods of 2011. I was out at Enoggera. That's just a fact. It's just true. And I think the Defence Forces,
believe me,
have done an
my source is I made it the fuck up.
And getting out and supporting, and people across Brisbane will know. They've seen them out there helping with the cleanup, as the state emergency service workers have. And so that support comes. We established the National Recovery and Resilience Agency. It's a national agency to ensure that we are better planning the prevention of these disasters, but to do it in partnership, Martin, with the state governments. We have to work together. On bushfires, for example, one of the things we want to see is greater transparency on the management of fuel loads, not just in the national parks, but in the forestry estates and the other areas where fuel loads build up. And when those fuel loads build up, we know what happens. But we don't have any transparency at the moment from the states about how those fuel loads are being managed. So
it's really important that he brings this up, because I actually understand his frustration here. Because there is, although people don't want you to know it, there is a... When shit's not being communicated between governments in power with regards to state and federal, it's a huge problem. But when things are being communicated, look how strong the Liberal Party is. We're fucking great. The Liberal New South Wales and the state Liberal government, we're strong as ever. But when the New South Wales Liberal government gutted the absolute fuck out of like the bush rangers and shit like that, out of Royal Park Ranger services and shit, and fuel loads were not looked at because the fire experts were literally quitting because they weren't getting paid. This is what's not being spoken to you. New South Wales Liberals, again, did this because they fucking destroyed the Royal National Park budgets and stuff like that. And bushfires happened. But again, he's not answering the question. He's just throwing more numbers of like money. People are still fighting for payments for 2011. People are still fighting for payments for like Black Friday. People are still probably... People in Newcastle are probably still fucking fighting for payments when the trains derailed in the fucking 70s, man. Like, you know, there's just money stagnating that's not going to people.
So yes, we will continue to invest. It's actually $300 million now we've committed out of that fund to deal with both the flood mitigation works, and particularly up there in...
$300 million out of a budget of $4.8 billion is really fucking small. It's massively small. If I've got $10... Hold on. It's legit. If I've got $45 and I give you $3, bruh. If I've got $48 and I give you $3, bruh. That is categorically small for what is a massive disaster.
There are major mitigation flood works there that have been prevented for many, many years. It was a local council, I can assure you, it wasn't a Liberal council, it was of the other persuasion. Who were stopping those flood mitigation works happening on the ground. We have a new mayor there in Lismore now who wants to get on with those projects, and we've immediately committed those funds to help him go and do it.
Okay, I'll get to Claire in just a moment, but we're having, as we meet tonight a huge development in terms of our foreign policy challenges with the Solomons signing
Here
this
goes the
deal
boats.
with
He's
China.
bringing them back.
PM, how is that not a foreign policy failure on this government's watch?
Well, I heard Penny Wong say that today. This is a very serious issue and one that we've been conscious of for a very long time. That's why we've increased in our Pacific Step-Up funding to $1.8 billion a year to be supporting our Pacific family. That's why during the pandemic, all of those countries turned to Australia to support them with vaccines, including the Solomon Islands, which we provided. That's why we've just more recently done the undersea cable project in the Solomon Islands, fully funding that so it wasn't built by China. $30 million for the Tina River transmission electrification project through our Pacific facility to ensure that we're providing the things that help these economies grow. In Fiji, we vaccinated the entire country so their economy can be opening up again and welcoming tourists back and getting their economies moving. It is a very serious issue. But what I found interesting today was that when the Labor Party said that this was a policy failure, no, this has happened because China is seeking to interfere in the Pacific. It's odd that the Labor Party, rather than acknowledging what is happening here, they wouldn't say, no, it isn't because China is coming in interfering in our region. Somehow, it's Australia's fault.
Part of international diplomacy on Australia's behalf is that things like this don't happen because it would be a policy failure if Australia were to give a whole lot of help to these places in the Southeast Asia region and then China just swoop in and go, hey, we've got a better deal, and then those regions turn around. That is called a policy failure. It is part and parcel of policy failing.
Now, when it comes to the issues of standing up to China, well, they've criticised me as well as being too strong. I was the one who went and spoke to all the other developed nations of the world and said, these are the 14 points that the Chinese government has been seeking to coerce Australia. I was the one who called them out on the pandemic and was called a racist. And when we shut the borders at the start of the pandemic, they accused me of being racist about that as well. No, I was protecting Australia. But what this shows...
Oh, thank God we're being protected, man. Dude, thank God, right, that we're being protected. Was that 40,000 odd new cases a day? Thank God he's protecting us. Come on, bro.
China has changed in the last 5 years, in particular.
No, they
haven't.
haven't.
We've had to significantly increase our investment in our intelligence services, our defence forces. And it's a very important issue, Kieran, and you've raised it. It's a very important issue, and I'm...
That's the fucking attitude. Fuck you, Kieran. Shut the fuck up and let me speak.
Sure, the Labor Party would agree. But what I don't understand is that when something of this significance takes place, why would you take China's side?
Well, let's get Mr. Albanese's view on it.
I don't think they did take China's side. No one took China's side. We're saying that you're shit, you idiot.
Have you taken China's side on this? And is it true that this would have happened regardless of what government was in office? Because
possibly
the Chinese Communist Party is clearly funneling a lot of funds into countries like the Solomons.
Well, that's an outrageous slur from the Prime Minister, and it shouldn't be. National security issues shouldn't be the subject of that sort of slur. The truth is that we all know that China has changed. China has changed its posture. It's more aggressive, it's more active in the region, and we need to understand that and respond to it. The contradiction in what Scott just said is saying that on the one hand, but they're not really stepping up. This isn't so much a Pacific step up, it's a Pacific stuff up. This is a major foreign policy failure by Australia. What we have here,
Whoa, Sky News! What the fuck is this? Excuse the fuck out of me, bruh. Huh? Hello? What the fuck is this? We're asking a question about China. Quick, zoom into the only Asian in the audience and just keep it there for an unnecessary long amount of time.
Here is the Solomons, that since the Second World War, we have all known how strategic a site it is. Less than 2,000 kilometres from Townsville and Cairns. We're closer, they're closer to the Solomons than we are now to Perth. And this has happened on our back door. And Julie Bishop, the former foreign minister, has said just today that the government should have sent the foreign minister. They've known about this for months. No foreign minister visitation, no defence minister visitation. They just sent a junior burger along in the last week, having known, and they were warned about this last August. I'll tell you what Joe Biden has done. President Biden has sent Kurt Campbell. He's senior advisor in the region in the Pacific. I know Kurt well. He has been dispatched to the Solomons. This government have been complacent here. They cut aid when they came into office in 2013. They cut aid to the Solomons. We should have been on top of this issue. We all agree that China has been aggressive. The question is, how do you respond to it? How do you respond to it?
All right, we have one more.
That backfired, and you can tell by his face. That question backfired because Albanese came out of it looking absolutely correct. Why didn't we send people into the fucking Solomons? Why haven't we been sending the foreign minister, whose literal job it is to make sure this doesn't happen, to these regions to, like, assuage them, to to tell them that their fears are not, we're going to help you. But they haven't done it because they've been complacent. China have been massively aggressive, sending people everywhere, talking to everyone. And, you know, if you don't take it seriously, they'll just go to China. China can flood them with money. They don't give a fuck. Look at Africa. They're flooding the fuck out of Africa with money. And it's working. And everyone else is just sitting there going, nah, we're not gonna fucking do that. We're gonna give them money? Like, no. You can't complain about China being, like, aggressively, like, moving while you sit there and let it happen and then go, how is that a policy failure? Like, no. It's a policy failure on a grand scale because they're just not doing anything. The Liberal government, the story of the Liberal government, they're not doing anything and hoping it gets better. Oh, we'll just give them money. That's fine. Everyone can live off money. No, they need to, like, see you and, like, know that you care about the region. China sends people over there. Oh, we care about you. We'll give you money as well. And it's like, oh, yeah, we'll go with China. It's like the used car salesman that, like, lets you drive the car and you get to see what's wrong with it. Oh, you know, and the car smells, it's got a little bit of a knock in the back, you know, nothing too bad. Versus the used car salesman that sells you a fucking lemon, doesn't let you drive it, and just goes, dude, I'm giving you a fucking deal here, dude. Like, just take it. No. It's a policy failure, and it's a silly question to ask if you're Sky News, because it made Albanese look very strong.
One more question, then we'll go to closing statements. We're coming up to, it's now 5 to 8. We have Claire now with a question.
Oh no, it's 5 to 8. That's it. It's 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock? You want me to moderate this fucking debate after 8 o'clock? Excuse me? This is really important for the Australian people, but you can't go overtime. I can't be talking about politics past 8 o'clock. I need to be making stories about boats.
Okay. The latest polling statistics show that voters have an...
I fucking hate polling statistics. I'm going to hate this question.
...all-time low level of faith in the integrity of both major party politicians. What are you going to do to restore their trust in the democratic process?
Man, don't get me started on polling questions. They're so fucking egregiously bad. Polling is so bad. If I go to the mall and I poll 50 people, but I only speak to, like, old men, that's not a poll. And this is exactly what they do. The polling statistics mean flat fucking dicks. It's ridiculous. If I went to Warringah, well, sorry, let's not name anything because fuck it, why not? If I go to the strongest Liberal seat in the fucking country and I poll 100 people there, and like 80% of them go, yeah, I'm voting Liberal, I wouldn't be surprised. If I go to the strongest Labor seat in the country and I go, I'm just going to poll 100 people there and 80 people go, yeah, we're voting Labor, I wouldn't be surprised. But these polls are done in this sort of area. They don't tell you where it's done. They just say, hey, it was a News Corp poll. Who'd the fucking poll? Anonymous polling is fucking worthless. It doesn't do anything. It might not even be true. You just don't know. You want an actual fucking poll? You go to people and you get their background and who they voted for, and then you say, oh, who am I voting for this time? That's how you get an accurate poll on what's changing. Polling is so dumb. It has never made sense, and it's literally clickbait. Every single poll that's ever been done is clickbait. It can't be anything else because it's all anonymous. I'm going to hate this question and answer.
Our strong economic plan is getting people off welfare and into work. Our economic plan is about helping Australians realise their big aspirations in life, to have their kids, to raise them, to get them a good education, to buy a home, to save for their retirement, to run a business and to have choices. Our economic plan is delivering that. Our economy now is one of the strongest in the world, of the advanced world, and that is giving Australians opportunities every single day.
Buy a house.
And what I've learned from my years in politics is that unless you can run a strong economy and manage money, maintain your AAA credit rating, keep the economy moving forward, then your aspirations for so many of these other issues can't be achieved. And that's why this election is very much about who can run the economy and who can manage money. And following through on those plans, doing what we said we would do, ensuring we said we would get more Australians into homes. We've got 300,000 Australians into their own home in just the last 3 years, just as we said.
The population of the country is billions. 300,000 people out of billions. Is it billions or is it millions? Fuck it, who cares? It's still, it's astronomically small.
We would. When we said we would stand by Australians as they went through the pandemic, we delivered the single largest economic intervention in JobKeeper that saved 700,000
I wish I could have a lager
jobs.
right now.
We have one of the lowest fatality rates from COVID in the world. It's been tough. It's been incredibly tough. But I'm so optimistic about where we go to from here, because together,
there's more
the country
people unemployed
has put itself
than that.
in a strong position, and we've had the opportunity to lead that process. And we can't turn back now. We're heading in the right direction. We want to keep going there. And that's where my government is seeking to take Australia.
Mr. Albanese.
It's been 10 years. What direction could you possibly be in? If I sit on the M1 until the ends of the earth, I'm going to end up back home. When does it change? It's been 10 fucking years.
Your response to Claire?
Yeah, thanks very much, Claire. Unfortunately, you're right on the money. There is so much disillusionment with our political processes and our political system. That's one of the reasons why we do need a strong National Anti-Corruption Commission to restore that faith. But we need to do more than that as well. One of the things I did when I became an opposition leader or Labor leader was that I said I wanted to be known as a Labor leader, not just oppose things for the sake of it. So if the government has had a good idea, we've been prepared to embrace it. Scott raised the issue of boat turnbacks. It's true that that wasn't our policy in 2013. It's a good idea. It worked. Therefore, we embrace it. That's what we do when you come up with a good idea. The Parliament couldn't have sat and couldn't have had all those programs through without our support. And I made the unusual statement that we would try to amend some of the legislation. We were concerned about people taking money out of their super. We were concerned about a range of the details, but we wouldn't allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good. So in part, this campaign is about what we will do. We will do different things. But I think it's also important to restore faith in politics is the how. And I want to unite the country. I want to not be a Prime Minister who's always looking for the wedge, always looking for the division. Because if we're going to move forward as a country, we need to work out our common interests. And that's why I think in industrial relations, for example, that unions and employers have common interests. You can't have union members unless you have successful businesses. And that's what we need to do. We need to look for areas of agreement, areas of consensus, areas in which the country can be united going forward, rather than the constant argy-bargy, which does seem to dominate a lot of our politics, and I think you're right, is putting people off.
Before we get the closing, it's...
Shut your fucking mouth, you absolute moron. Let him speak. The question was asked. The people want an answer. For fuck's sake, man.
8 o'clock if you're okay to...
It's a debate. It can run over time. It doesn't need... It's fucking hell, man.
Just take one more question from...
It's not Seinfeld. It can go over time, dude. Jesus fucking Christ.
Lizzie, and then we can wrap up. Lizzie?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. Just going off the back of Claire's question, I read today that only 55% of 18-year-olds are currently enrolled to vote. Yeah. So I wanted to get an idea about how we're going to look at the disillusionment, I guess, externally as well as internally, coming off the back of some of those tragic stories that we've heard from federal government lately with bullying and some issues inside around that. So how can we look internally to fix that?
Thanks very much for your question, Lizzie. Another stat that I've seen around, I don't know if you've seen it or not, that's of great concern, is the diminishing support for democracy as our form of government. That's a real concern that people out there don't get, why democracy is important. And that's why forums like this and our federal campaigns are so critical, that people get to participate in. In some countries, of course, people risk their lives to fight for the right to vote. We have such a proud history in this country in terms of women's participation in the political system is one thing that we were the first country in the world where that occurred. But we need to do much better. We need to engage, I think, with young people. We need to engage on issues that involve them because they are our future. And I know that young people are particularly concerned about issues like climate change, making sure that the world that they inherit is one that's at least as pristine as the one that's there at the moment. So I think it's a matter of us reaching out, engaging, working out new ways of participation as well in the political process, because I think that figure of 55%, I think you said, of 18-year-olds enrolled is of real concern. And we need to look at ways as well of making it easier for people to get on the road.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt! Why are you interrupting his answer there? For the love of everything holy, just shut your fucking mouth. He's just about to finish. Just let him fucking finish, you idiot.
Now, PM.
Well, thanks, Lizzie.
We spent most of the time listening to Albo there with the camera on the audience, by the way. I just want you to know that.
One of the things I've noticed in Australian politics and in just civil debate in this country, which has really changed, which young people are growing up with today. There's many more challenges young people face today than they did when I was growing up and Anthony was growing up. But one of the biggest changes has been, I think, the very corrosive impact of social media on our society, and particularly in the way that it robs and steals the confidence and hopes of young people in particular. The bullying that goes online, the destroying of lives that goes online, and the big tech companies. I can tell you that our government has been leading the world in standing up to those big tech companies. We put the first on...
What the fuck? No, we haven't.
...online e-safety commissioner in place in the world. We ensured that we've introduced legislation which makes those companies pay when they allow on their platforms for people to be bullied in this way. The way people engage on social media, I think, is incredibly dangerous. It has its great advantages. Families stay connected in ways that we never could before. But at the same time, what has happened with social media in our political debate over the last 10 years, it makes me terribly sad, and I think young people have been most affected by that. There are things that people would never say to each other, but they will write it in a comment, and it's hurtful and it's destructive, and the big tech companies have to take responsibility for that. And my government has put in place legislation, has put in place supports to ensure that we can change that. And I think that's one of the best ways we can get a better debate in this country, a better discourse, a better engagement, to be able to disagree better rather than what we see on social media today. I think it's really undermining our society.
PM, thanks, Lizzie.
Yeah, I'm basically gonna say, like, a lot of the shit and the mire to do with the online discourse in Australia has to do with the fact that Murdoch owns the entirety of News Corp, and News Corp owns like every major outlet in Australia. Reminder, speaking about toxicity in the Twitter discourse is incredibly funny when this is broadcast on Sky News.
Thank you very much, and we'll get the closing statements. But before we do, quickly, the independents, you both say you're not going to do a deal with the independents.
Here we go, do a deal. We're doing a deal. I'm gonna fucking hate this again, because this motherfucker is just, I'm gonna hate this answer. Boy, I'm gonna hate this answer.
Enough seats to form government, you will, won't you? Let's just clear that up. Come on.
Well,
you both will.
I'm the only leader hoping to lead a single party, the Labor Party, shooting for 76 seats.
Shooting for it, but if you're short, you will. Anyway, we'll leave it there.
What the fuck is it? What the fuck does this mean? Oh my god. Yep, don't even attempt to form minority government. What is this question? Is it like if a major party doesn't get 76 seats, you just throw it away? Is that it? You just throw the entire election away. Fuck it, dude. No one got the majority. Throw the election away. It didn't count. I hate this motherfucker so much. Independent votes are so important. They're so important. And not just blindly voting for the major party in Australia is so important. I can't stress this enough. There is no such thing as doing deals. If you put one Labor, two Green... if you put one Green, two Labor, and you fill out the rest of the numbers underneath the line, there's no such thing as giving your vote to someone else. It determines that your first party preference was the Greens. If the Greens don't win, your second party preference in Labor takes over. It is incredibly important, if you want that to happen, to vote underneath the line in Australian elections. There is no such thing as this doing backroom deals for priority. What that essentially means is that when you turn up to the polling day, they give you that sheet of paper and it has the pre-filled numbers of what you want to do. That is the only backroom deal that can happen. It is the only one. You should be informed enough as a voter to do your own research on what you want. It is imperative and incredibly important that you do your own research into your local member about what they're going to give you in your local seat. And then you put that person at number one. And then you look at everyone else and go, what are they going to give me? If you just vote by the sheet they give you, the backroom deals take over. But minority government is still a thing. If Labor gets 60 seats and an independent, and the Greens get 20, those 80 seats are a majority. That's how it works. If the Liberals weren't allied with the Nationals, they'd never get in power. But no one brings this up because it's a coalition, I guess. This is the dumbest question known to man, and the fear-mongering around independent parties is so fucking irritating right now. It's so irritating. In Australian politics, independent parties are incredibly important. And letting dumb shit smug idiots like this fucking guy with his fucking stupid head talk about independence like they don't matter is frustrating. Give me the Rum Party. You've got Shooters Fishers. Shooters Fishers are a legitimate party. They have a very strong backbone about what they stand for in the constituents, and they started as an independent. They're likely going to get more votes than the Greens. They could be very close. They're now third, fourth, easily. A long time ago, not the case. People laughed at them as they came in. I think it's Shooters, Fishers, Farmers now, but they're incredibly important because they have the backbone to stand about what they believe in. The Greens are important like that as well. You can't... Do not let this fear-mongering about independence not mattering actually fucking stick, because it's trash. It's trash tier journalism. It's trash tier politics. It shouldn't matter. Independents serve an incredibly important role in Australian politics, and it's a role that can be done. It's not like the American system where the Greens Party is dog shit and the Libertarian Party, they're only just there to steal votes. You've got preferences. The preferences matter. You should use them.
Yeah. I'll take that as a comment.
No, there's two coalitions. There's the Liberals and Nationals, and of course the Labor Party would be supported by the Greens. But
that's not always 100% correct. It's not 100% correct.
PM, you kick off.
So did this fucking guy just ask a question as a gotcha moment?
Shooting for 76 seats.
Shooting for it, but if you're short, you will. Anyway.
Lead a single party. I'm the only leader.
Better.
Much, and we'll get the closing statements. But before we do, quickly, the independents, you both say you're not going to do a deal with the independents. If you've got enough seats to form government, you will, won't you? Let's just clear that up. Come on.
Well,
you both will.
I'm the only leader hoping to lead a single party, the Labor Party, shooting for 76 seats.
Shooting for it, but if you're short, you will. Anyway, we'll leave it there.
Like, what does this mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just stupid. It's just muckrake fucking journalism. This stupid guy. You could fit this guy's IQ between the gap in his front teeth and still have room for lunch.
I'll take that as a comment.
No, there's two coalitions. There's the Liberals and Nationals, and of course the Labor Party would be supported by the Greens. But
it's nonsense, of course.
Why don't we kick off the closing remarks? PM, you kick off. You won the toss.
Dumb. Why even ask the question, you stupid idiot? Could actually be a genuine question if you didn't ask it like a smug, arrogant cunt.
And then the closing final comments from Mr. Albanese.
Well, first of all, can I thank you for all your questions tonight? Can I thank you, Anthony, for joining us here this evening?
Someone says no.
I think this has been a good opportunity to talk about some important issues tonight. This election is a choice, and these processes are important to help people make their choice. But fundamentally, I really believe this election is all about the economy that you and your family and your communities will live in for the next 10 years. It will determine your economic opportunity.
The next 10 years? The next 3 years? Election cycles go every 3 years in Australia, Scott. Come on.
Opportunities, your
Fucking
job,
liberals,
your
man.
wages. All of these things and the services that Australia can afford to deliver.
God bless
the
you.
essential services that you rely on. It all starts with managing a strong economy. Our government has proven that with a strong economic plan that has been delivering. Unemployment
Citation
falling
there.
to 4%, a AAA credit rating, the biggest budget turnaround we've seen in 70 years. The future, we're heading in the right direction. Now is not the time to turn back. So I thank you for your question, and I look forward to realising the great opportunities Australia has as we seize them with the economic plan that we know is working and will continue to work for you and your family and the essential services you rely on.
Prime Minister, thank you. Mr. Albanese.
Thanks very much, Kieran, and thanks everyone for participating tonight, and thanks, Scott, for participating tonight as well.
Thanks, Scott.
I think the problem
Fuck
for
you,
this
Scott.
government is that they have been in office for almost a decade. They're shooting for a second decade in office, and they haven't shown any plan either tonight or during the entire period in which they've been in office about how you actually grow wages, how you have an economy that works for people, not the other way around. I want an economy that sees wages being lifted.
Yes.
I want people to enjoy a higher standard of living. I want us to aspire and to be as optimistic as we should be as a country. I have two simple philosophies that I have, and in part that drives me every day. One is no one left behind. That is, the Labor Party will always look after the disadvantaged. That's why we do things like the NDIS and the big picture things for social justice. But also no one held back. We're the party of opportunity. We're the party that's into training and education and understands that if we're going to advance as an economy, then we need to have stronger education. And we see the economy as growing with the opportunity that is there to use clean energy, to drive high-value manufacturing, to drive growth through the economy. Not always.
I'm going to have to wrap you up.
Not always.
Shut
Can I
the
just
fuck
I'll make
Shut
one final point.
the fuck up.
If I'm Prime Minister, I'll accept responsibility. Each and every day.
Okay.
I'll work hard and I'll accept responsibility, not always seek to blame someone else.
Thank you, everyone in the room, for your involvement. It's been a wonderful discussion. Thank you for joining us at home. Those in the room, please put your hands together for the Prime Minister and Opposition Leader.
What does interrupting him there actually fucking accomplish?
Thank you.
What is interrupting actually accomplish? It's a fucking debate. Just let it go, man. Can't let him speak too well about himself. We are Sky News after all. Man, oh man. Alright. I guess in the end, it went about the way I expected it to go. It was the Liberal government talking about things they've done, but in reality, it hasn't done anything at all because they've been in power since what, 2014? They don't talk about the future. 2013. They don't talk about the future. They just talk about, oh, we're doing good things, but the good things aren't showing at all. There was a whole lot of... They didn't blame a lot on the fact that they had a pandemic for 2 years, which was incredibly weird. I would have thought they would blame about that. Labor talks about themselves being pioneers. They are. That's just the way it is. Labor pioneer change. They pioneer what they do. Yeah, I'm not massively surprised. It was a pretty... How I expected that debate to go is how it went. I would like to know the numbers. Oz poll debate. Interruptions. Yeah, how many? What was the interruption count? The interruption count was 14. I guess I owe you guys 14 shots whenever I get around to it, and I've got hard alcohol in the place. I would like to know the... So 40 votes to Albanese, 35 to Morrison, and 25 undecided afterwards. However, if that's true, so be it. I think that in a political sense is very good for Albanese because he hasn't had a great first week. I think he's had a middling first week. I think there's been a lot of much ado about him getting numbers wrong a minute before his like financial minister got the numbers right, which doesn't matter. Like nothing that Albanese does about tax numbers matters if the financial minister doesn't like it. So that person's the minister's going to have the final count, and if the minister gets the numbers right, I don't really give a fuck, and neither should you. Much ado about nothing. There was like one question. I am surprised. I guess Sky News Australia only got one question in about scare tactics and then talked about the boats for 20 minutes, which was droll. Because they can't get the Labor government this time. They're only going to be able to bring up things in the past about the Labor government because Labor and Liberals' policy on borders is pretty similar. However much you disagree with it, and if you disagree with it massively like me, it's not going to be fun to talk about it. So yeah, I think the debate went pretty much how I expected it to go. Liberals didn't say a whole lot of truths, and they also didn't talk about plans for the future. They talked a lot about what they've done. Labor talked about things that they may do and they want to do. Whichever way you fall, I guess, is going to determine if you like change, you probably want to vote Labor. If you like the status quo, you're probably going to vote Liberal. Much the same as every election. My biggest pet peeve is the fucking moderator. He can fuck himself with a cactus. What an absolutely ridiculous... You've got one fucking job, and it's not to interrupt people. And to Morrison's credit, he did try to interrupt Morrison a lot, but Morrison just steamrolled him and didn't give a fuck. And he didn't really put up much of a fight about it. Whereas Albanese was respectful and didn't. I would have liked to see Albanese be disrespectful and just steamroll him. Because... fuck it, the guy was being an asshole. The last question about independence was stupid as shit. It was so stupid, I don't understand. He interrupted the final fucking statement from the people. It's like if the lawyer's doing a final statement and like the defendant, like the judge just turns up and goes, actually, I want you to stop speaking. It's like, come on, like why? The thing about independence was like hard tier like stupidity. Didn't make any sense at all. Like, yeah, okay, the government's not going to try and form a minority government with independence. Of course they are. Like, what the fuck? Whoever gets the most votes out of Liberal and Labor will likely take office with independent control. Because the independents know that why would you work with not a majority of seats rather than a minority of seats? Silly. And when does a party aim for a minority in an election? I don't know. I don't think anyone does. I think both sides want to win 73. Or is it 78 now? I don't know. Gerrymandered to fuck. Who cares? They're going to aim for a majority. If they don't get it, they'll go for a minority. This isn't politics 101. You don't need to be a brainiac to figure it out. Like, silly. That was cool. We got more of that. I kind of want to deep dive. If I don't get DMCA striked by Sky News, which is why I'm going to stop streaming and then stream again, download the VOD and fucking delete it. posted on YouTube where DMCA strikes don't matter. I would like to go into all of them. I think it's fairly important to talk about politics, although many people might disagree. Australian politics can get very messy because, as I said at the start, Sky News, Murdoch Media controls everything you hear about politics in Australia, and they lie frequently. So politics can get kind of messy. So I would like to talk about a lot of it. I think many people in the chat kind of agree with me, but who knows? If you want another deal of politics, I can talk about the French election, in which Macron is sizing up his lead against Le Pen, which is very, very good. I don't like there's a lot of talk about the lesser of two evils. I think Macron's not evil. Le Pen is, but Macron's kind of middling. Not a whole lot of spice to him. He does his job. He does it effectively, and he should get the vote. So that's cool. But for everything else, I think we're done with politics. I think we're done with politics today. I think we can move into video games. Let's get a news poll going in chat. Okay. Well, listen. Chat polling is also anonymous. So, there you go. There you go. Could you imagine that? There we go. This is a good poll. This is probably my favorite poll. This is a good poll. I like this. Everyone vote. Everyone vote. Everyone vote. I'm going to cast my vote for Labour. I'm going to be right back while we listen to some tunes. Be right back, chap, and then we'll play some video games. Alright. Alrighty. We just doing React content or we play video games? What do we do? This vote looking pretty good for Labor, I'll tell ya. Let me tell ya. Polling looking good for Labor. Although someone's voting independent. So. I don't know. Looking like a minority government. Cringe. Alright, Tam. For real, man. You link me Paul Murray live? I'm not watching that. I'm not watching that. I'm not even clicking on that. Bro, please, no. It's another debate. No. No. With Hanson and Palmer. No. I refuse. I'm not clicking that. I'm not. I'm not. I don't want to hear what any of them have to say. Oh, look, Labor wins, dude. With 3 votes. Independent, 1. Looks like Labor gonna win the election.
Please.
No. You gave me a cent. And now you're top bidder. How long does it fucking go for? I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to watch this. Only an hour? So that one only went for an hour as well.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I scrolled down. Paul Murray is the Australian side gonna get. This was in 2019. Okay, Tam's trolling, dude. Tam's just trolling, I guess. Why are you linking me something from the 2019 election, you sponge? Come on then. Come on then. Give me the good link. Link a good one. I'm waiting. I can't fucking wait for this. The only thing you need to understand about the United Australia Party is that, like, they had an ad running in New South Wales where they were like, if you vote for Liberal and Labor, they're gonna work together in Parliament. And it's like, yep, that's what government does. Liberal, Labor, and the Greens are going to work together in Parliament. Like, yes, thank you. That is how it works. That's how government works. So, you're not really getting, like, intellectual heavyweight shit from them.